What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Cjthecheesedj here, and we are back with another Total War Warhammer video for you guys today. And today, guys, we are taking a look at all the new introduced units in the Hunter and the Beast DLC that is coming out in a few days for the Empire. Now, guys, you can see here there are quite a few new units. I mean, we've got multiples of certain units, but that doesn't matter. You can see here that there are quite a number of them, and the coolest one of them all, I've got to say, is Markus Wulfhart, the Beast himself here, the King of Hunters. He's right here. He's ready to battle. He is a very powerful lord as well. But you can see here already that some of these archers do have Vanguard deployment. But guys, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through all the new units that have been brought in for the Hunter and the Beast DLC. And we're going to go over them today and take a look at all their stats. Now, you guys can see we've got a front line of pretty much just straight up archers and huntsmen. So that's pretty cool. But you can see here, these guys all can get Vanguard deployed. But without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to go over the archers first. So the archers are one of the newer units, one of the new units for the DLC. And these guys are pretty cool. They've got decent stats for their cost. They're okay. Like, they do have some pretty solid range and some pretty solid missile damage for their cost. I think they cost 600. We will be going over their cost at the end of the video. It's a little bit easier like that, so we can go through everything. But these guys have pretty much 20 armor, 48 leadership, 33 speed, not very good melee stats, so you do want to try and keep these guys out of melee combat. Charge bonus and weapon strength, you can see there, it's okay. 21 weapon damage, 3 armor piercing value, 20 ammunition, 120 range, and 22 missile damage. So these guys aren't lacking. I mean, they will, for their cost, they aren't lacking, but they will be able to do the job. They can act as basic missile infantry and do some decent damage over time to particular targets. But, you know, they're nothing amazing. So these guys do have a regiment of renown unit, and that is the Cjthechecks. Now, these guys are pretty good. They're a lot solider. I mean, they're a little bit more solider than their standard archer variants. You can see here they've got an extra 10 leadership, an extra 5 melee attack, an extra 6 melee defense, and an extra 6 missile damage in comparison to the standard archers. So these guys are pretty good. Now, as well as that, these guys also have snipe, so they can remain hidden while firing, which is pretty good. You don't need to stick them in the forest. As well as that, they do have a Vanguard deployment as well, so that can be really useful for sort of sneaking up on your opponent, getting a few shots in, and then backing them away. Very useful for kite builds, and I would recommend bringing them along. And you can currently see here that this Lizardman army is in a bit of a pickle. But you can see here the Cjthechecks are backing up. But, you know, these guys are just your standard sort of archers. They're not that great. Vanguard deployment, stalk, and sniping. So nothing too amazing. But, guys, let's move on to the next bulk of the army, the Huntsmen. Now, these guys are much more impressive than their standard archer variants. These guys have anti-large, Vanguard deployment, stalk, and they can fire whilst moving. Now, obviously, it has to be in front of them. It can't be a 360-degree sort of angle like the Marauder Horsemen and stuff like that. But these guys are certainly up there with their value. So, like I said, they do have anti-large. But in comparison to your standard Huntsmen, they've got an extra 5 armor, an extra, I think it's 15 leadership as well. As well as that, they've got a little bit more speed, a little bit more melee attack, and their range. They have an extra 40 on top of their range. So instead of 120, they've got 160 range, which is a little bit better than the archers. And I would recommend bringing the Huntsmen over the archers, especially if you're going up against armies that utilize large units, like, for example, the Lizardmen, and have this angry-ass Dreadsaurian coming after you. The Huntsmen will be able to deal a bit more damage to the larger targets. So you can see here the bonus versus large that they get is an extra 8 damage. So it is worth it in the end. I would recommend bringing these guys over the archers if you know the opponent is going to have larger targets. But these guys do also have a regiment of renowned unit as well. You can see here the White Wolves. These are also Huntsmen over here. So these guys also have anti-large, Vanguard deployment. They do have stalk, and they can fire whilst moving. Now, these guys are a little bit tankier, a little bit better than their standard variant. So you can see here their base leadership is 65, which is slightly better than the Huntsmen. As well as that, they also have better melee attack. So you can see here the standard Huntsmen only have 16 melee attack, 17 melee defense, while the White Wolves have 36 melee attack and 32 melee defense. Now, as well as that, they also have a little bit more weapon strength, a little bit more of a charge bonus, as well as that, an extra round of ammunition and an extra 5 missile damage on top of that. And pretty much the same stats in terms of that. They've got 16 standard missile damage, 4 armor piercing, 8 bonus versus large. Now, as well as that, they do have immune to psych, which can be very good for fighting large, terrifying monsters, which these guys will be doing because that is their job as huntsmen. So you definitely want to be utilizing these guys to fire on the larger monsters and even enter melee combat if the case arises that you need to, because you've used all your ammunition. So you can really use these guys to get into the fray, and they will not break. They will fight till the end. So they are pretty good as well. So let's move on to the next units, and these guys are the real MVPs, the war wagons. I've just got to find some. Here we go. There's some over here. So these guys have 3 different variants. You've got the handgunners war wagon, you've got the mortar war wagon, and you've got the hellblaster war wagon. Each of these have their uses. Each of them are not better than the other. They just all have their own uses. But the main benefit of these guys is that they're on the back of horses. They are chariots, so they can fire while moving. It gives you a lot of maneuverability with these guys and makes them a lot better. And you can see here that these guys do have also armored piercing missiles as well, which is great. So these war wagons are great because you can see here they've got the ability to outrun slower foes and still cause damage. So you can see here the war wagon has a speed of 50, which the Dreadsaurian should technically be catching up because it does have 60 speed. However, it is very tired. And you can see our war wagons are active. Like, these guys aren't going anywhere anytime soon. They're popping off damage on the Dreadsaurian. Are they targeting the Dreadsaurian? They should be targeting the Dreadsaurian. They're going to get another volley off. You guys going to fire for me? Fire. Making me look like an idiot. Anyway, I think they're going in for another fire. What are you guys... Oh, they're out of ammo. Okay. So, these guys can pretty much act as chariots as well. So they can, once they run out of ammo, go into the back line of your opponent's army and hit them. And, you know, get some decent damage off. But you can see here, 90 armor on these guys, base leadership value of 65, 50 speed, okay stats, 18 melee attack, 12 melee defense, 26 weapon strength, 6 of it being armor piercing damage, a 29 charge bonus, which is pretty solid for such a big rickety unit. As well as that, they've also got a 130 range, which is pretty solid. It's a little bit more than the standard archers, which is expected. These guys are missile chariots, and then they have 34 missile damage. So they've got 3 base missile damage, 15 armor piercing damage, which is pretty dang good. So, you know, the armor piercing value will come in handy. I don't know if you should use it on stuff like the feral Dreadsaurians. Maybe something on a little bit less armored, because that could definitely help you out. But Markus Wulfhart over here is getting chumped by a bunch of skinks. So that is the first war wagon. The second one is the mortar war wagon, and this one is currently engaged in combat, but this guy has mortars strapped to the back of him. So guys, the next variant is the war wagon with the mortar, and this is pretty much exactly the same as the basic war wagon. Instead of having handgunners in the back, it's got a freaking mortar. So it's going to be a big difference. Now, the ammunition of the standard war wagon is 200, you can see there, and the ammunition of the mortar war wagon is 16. However, these guys obviously have significantly more range as well as missile damage because they're mortars. So the range is 340 and the missile damage is 121. Is this the... Yeah, there we go. So you can see there they've got a base missile damage of 100, 30 armor piercing missile damage, 60 explosive base damage, and 16 explosive armor piercing damage with a reload time of 17.1 seconds. So I'm not too sure what the standard mortar reload time is, but that seems like a standard stock time for the mortar. Now, other than that, there's pretty much no difference. The health on the mortar war wagon, sorry, the standard war wagon is actually a little bit extra. They have 96 health extra on the basic war wagon, which I don't really I guess it could be because there's more men on the back of it, I suppose. I don't know, it's a little bit funny, but that's the mortar war wagon. Now, this gun is pretty cool. Obviously, these guys can fire once again while moving, which is really helpful. And the final unit of the Empire rework, well, not the final unit, the final war wagon is the Hellblaster war wagon. The Black Lions, the Regiment of Renowns, these guys are armored, they've got armor piercing missiles, pretty much exactly the same as the other war wagons, except they pack a heck of a lot more damage. and a little bit more range than the standard Hellblaster. So you can currently see here the Black Lions have a base leadership value of 75, which is better than the other ones. We're going to get these guys to just start opening fire on this Carnosaur, and you guys are going to see sort of damage that they will do. So they're just going to pop off straight there. We're going to get that just to shoot in there, just to show you guys. So the Black Lions have the same stats as the other war wagons. So the Black Lions are able to deal a crap ton of damage, and their range is 250, which makes these guys very, very useful. We're going to get these guys to move over here. I think we've got the skirmish. Let's turn skirmish off, and we're going to turn them around and face the Carnosaur. But you can see their range bar. Like, that is a heck of a lot of range. They can do some serious damage with that. They've got a missile damage value of 965, and that is crazy. 18 missile damage, 57 armor piercing missile damage, and 9 shots per volley. Pretty incredible stuff there. Now you can see they're about to engage in the battle with the Skinks. We're going to get these guys to switch over to melee. But these guys also can do charge damage, like I said. So they are very good for that. If you do run out of ammunition, you can get some recharges on your opponent. Sort of break their morale and their leadership, which could help in the long haul. But these guys are great. The Regiment of Renown now obviously can only have one in each army. But they are definitely worth it, I think. The problem with the Empire's Hellblaster artillery piece is that the range is limited on it, and the mobility on it is also extremely limited. So the Hellblaster on the War Wagon really fixes that problem. So let's get these guys to target up this Dreadsaurian. We're going to just take a quick look at see how much damage they do real quick. If they don't run, can you guys stop running for me and just fire? You guys can go into melee. We're going to intercept them just real quick. You can see there, they did about 400 damage, 500 damage to the Dreadsaurian. Look, it's still going. Look at that damage going. So these guys are great. They're going to deal some serious damage to all sort of threats that your opponent brings to the battlefield, and I'd heavily recommend them. Now guys, the final unit, well, not the final unit, the leader of this unit is Markus Wulfhart. Now this guy is a real big beast. Now guys, the legendary lord for the Hunts Marshals expedition is none other than Markus Wulfhart himself. And this guy is a downright beast in himself. He is designed to hunt large monsters. He has Stalk, Anti-Large, he has the ability to fire whilst moving, and he also has Vanguard deployment. So this guy is really, really good. He's got 180 range, a missile damage of 556, so he's easily going to be able to pump targets. Look at that range on him. Look at that juicy range. He's already firing back here. Look at that damage. Let's take a look here. Did we hit him? Yeah, we did. For about 1,000 damage. Not 1,000 damage, just a little bit too much. So this guy is incredible. He's got 50 armor, a base leadership value of 75, 36 speed, 58 melee attack, and 52 melee defense. So once he does run out of ammunition, he will be able to pretty much engage in melee combat and put up a decent fight against melee combatants. He's got a weapon strength of 360, 270 of that is base weapon damage, 90 of it is armor piercing damage, a 30 charge bonus, 45 ammunition I think it was, 180 range which I covered, and the 556 missile damage. 120 of it being standard missile damage, 280 of it being armor piercing, and 120 bonus versus large. So you definitely want to use this guy to take on the large threats against your army, because he will deal with them pretty dang quickly. Now he's also got 3 abilities. The Amber Bow, which is his magical weapon, causes major magical damage, effective at long range. You saw us fire it at the Saurian, and it's good from a high angle and good against large combatants and single combatants. He also has another ability, which is the Hunter's Snare, and this pretty much enables him to trap all enemies in a radius, and this prevents them from moving. Did it hit these guys? I think it just missed these guys. So this is really good for him getting away. Now he's got 3 casts of that, which can be very effective, and his final ability is the Focused Shot. So this pretty much does damage, more damage against opponents that are missing more health. And you once again want to use this on large combatants. So for example, I don't know if we'll pop it off on this Feral Carnosaur. We're too close. We're too close. So we'd have to wait for the Hunter's Snare to pop, and then we could back away. But Markus is capable of entering melee combat. He's a decent melee combatant, like I said. He doesn't actually have any anti-large melee damage, so most of his damage is ranged, but he's a very solid unit. He also has fleet-footed, which gives him an extra 18% acceleration and 18% speed if there are enemies in his ability range of 70 meters. So that is very good. He's also unbreakable, and he does have 15% missile resistance. So he's a very solid legendary lord, and I can see him being very useful against factions that have large legendary lords like the Chaos Warriors with Kolek, and the Lizardmen obviously bringing their huge mounts as well. Can be very useful. So I definitely see him being used very often. But let's go into the cost of all these guys. Alrighty guys, so here we have the cost of the units. So you can see here Markus Wulfhart with all his items and his abilities costs 1749. Your standard legendary lord, he is actually... How does he fare on the empires overall? So he's the second most expensive lord, which, I mean, actually, if you factor in these guys and their mounts, that could make a difference. So he's still a very strong lord, and I would recommend bringing him. Now, as for the archers, you can see here, 350. They're going to be okay. They're going to do decent damage. They can act as chaff if you need them to. They can take on non-armored targets. I would recommend to use them against non-armored targets because they will deal a little bit more damage to them because they don't have the armor-piercing values. But for 350, you could easily bring quite a few of these guys and use them. Now, the Cjthecheesedj, the Regiment of Renown, are 550. I do think they are worth it as well because of their Vanguard deployment and their Stalk, as well as their sniping. It does come in handy, especially if you're playing a very kitey build. It will help you pretty much bring your opponent closer to you and allow you to do more damage. Now, the Huntsmen are 650. I honestly would swap out archers for Huntsmen, but it is very dependent on what faction you are facing as well. If you're going to be facing against Bretonia, for example, and they're just going to bring a ton of peasants, you're going to just want the standard archers. You're not going to want to waste your Huntsman's ammo on shooting down peasants. You know, you want to save these guys for the larger targets. And the White Huntsman, the White Wolves, sorry, I would bring for 900 gold, hands down, without a doubt. These guys are great. I do think they are not the best archers, but they are one of the Empire's best missile infantry units, I believe. I would definitely recommend bringing these guys, especially once again against large factions. Now, as for the war wagons, you can see they're down here. So 950 for the standard war wagon. Definitely worth the value. You've pretty much got yourselves a maneuverable handgunners unit, which is really great. And the war wagon with the mortar is also pretty good. The standard mortar costs 650, but with this you can play a much more kiting build, allow yourself to move around and manipulate the battlefield to how you actually need to shoot your targets. So I reckon it's worth bringing. Now, the Hellblaster war wagon, the Regiment of Renown, is 1800. That's a little bit of a lot. But if you look at the standard Hellblaster volley gun, you can see here it's 1100, and the range on it and the maneuverability on it is a little bit less. So the range is higher on the standard Hellblaster, but the missile damage is actually less. So, and then you get the actual extra bit of having it as a cavalry unit, as well as being maneuverable. So it's definitely worth bringing. You know, you can obviously only bring one Regiment of Renown into multiplayer battles, so these guys are definitely worth the 1800 cost. I'd recommend them. So yeah guys, but that's pretty much going to wrap up the video today. Oh, one other thing that we did not mention is that there is actually a Huntsman General as well. So this guy is another lord, and he does also have flame abilities, and this guy has very good flame abilities. So you compare this with a Bright Wizard who has fire damage and deals some serious damage. This oil flask here actually applies a 50% flame weakness and negative 48 speed on contact. So you can use this against, well, pretty much any unit, and they'll take an extra 50% damage from fire, which is really good. And you can then pair that with Hail of Fire, which causes fire damage to your allies for a certain duration. You're going to be dishing out some serious damage to whatever you've cast the oil flask on. So I definitely see a lot of use for this guy as well, and I would really bring this guy into fights as well, because that oil flask is really incredible, and it'll pair really well with the Bright Wizard and like a Screaming Skull or something like that, a Burning Head. So guys, that's going to wrap up the video today. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe down below for more, but other than that, I will catch you in the next one.